Photographer Lou Jones is featured on today's episode of The Crit House. Today's MyFive series looks at the photography of Alfred Eisenman, Gordon Parks, Pete Turner, Roy de Carava, and Ernst Haas. And Lou Jones, you've been with us on the program before. It is lovely to have you back. You're quite the legend in the Boston area and elsewhere for your photography. It is true. It is true. So you have spent a career doing seemingly everything in photography. You've worked on the commercial side, you've worked on the journalistic side, you've worked on the side where you're doing personal projects. I know you have the Pan Africa project that is now on display at the Fitchburg Art Museum, and that's an ongoing project with a book that's coming out. Maybe tell us a little bit about like who you are as a photographer, so we can know a little bit about the legend that is Lou Jones.
Well, you bring up a very good point about how I've done a lot of different things, but I'm a photographer. I make my living. I have a studio. If you look at right behind me, behind that wall, on the other side of that brick wall, there's a large studio, offices for my employees, et cetera, et cetera. And historically, we have continued to do what I term long-term projects. So I've photographed many, many things. I've done 13 different Olympics, summer and winter Olympic Games. I have photographed 27 men and women on death rows all over the United States and produced a couple of books from that.
Yeah, such a powerful project that is.
I did a huge series. I'm still doing it on jazz. I've been photographing jazz for probably 40 years.
So you picked 5 images, which
Yes.
I know is a challenge for people to come up with 5 images that have somehow influenced their creative career, but you have done it. What did you decide in the process of choosing on those 5 images?
Again, like my career, I've sort of been a little bit more random about the nature of choosing them, mainly because they were photographs that influenced not necessarily my career, although some of them did.
Mm-hmm.
They influenced the way I think about how to take pictures or why pictures read to the general audience. And I'll talk about that with each one. But I literally tried to find a photograph that literally at some point in my career went, oh, I didn't know you could do that.
Huh.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, knowing what photographs you've put up there, that seems like it's going to make for an interesting discussion. So let's take a look at your 5 images.
Okay. Well, we're going to start with Alfred Eisenman. I suspect that many of your viewers do not know who he is. He's no longer with us. He was one of the first 5 Life magazine photographers. And this picture may be a fairly complicated, and yet at the same time simple one, but he is standing on a dirigible. And the first time I saw this and realized what was going on, I just went, oh my God, why would you put yourself in that situation? We're talking about thousands of feet above sea level, above the ground. This thing is flying. And as I said, it was a life-changing period because I looked at it and it literally made my stomach churn.
It does make you queasy looking at it, doesn't it?
It does. He's photographing the repair of this dirigible thousands of feet as it's flying from one place to another. And I just went, that is just crazy. And then after a long period of time, probably weeks, I realized that's what I should be doing.
Oh. Gordon Parks with one of the all-time iconic images in photography.
I saw this picture and just flipped out the first. Now, the history of this picture is that Life magazine did not use it for years, and it was hidden for years. I mean, actually, it wasn't Life. It was Stryker, I believe. So it was the FSA. Isn't that what it is? FSA.
I believe so. Yeah, yeah.
Sent him out to do this, and he created this, and they wouldn't show it, and so it sat in the Library of Congress for many years before it was shown. This was a wonderful photograph, and it's lots of people know it, but also by the same token, how much it changed, because a lot of his work was a little bit more journalistic.
Yes,
this was literally a created photograph, and I saw how, as photographers, we could do that.
Yeah, well, it is. It does tell stories. Thank you for sharing it. Now, Pete Turner is here with this image, and you sent this to me, and I had no idea what you were doing with it. So I'm looking forward to seeing why this is up here. I mean, Pete Turner
was kind of intended that way. He was a hero of mine when I first started out, and he was one of those people. And the last person I believe we're going to show is also, they were friends. They were breaking the rules that were set about photography at that time in history. And photography was not art. It was just, and if you had to be a photographer, the only artful part of photography was black and white. Well, Pete Turner was one of those people, commercial photographer, as commercial as you get, made color photography so important. His color work, his graphic, he was so well known for these amazing colors that he photographed and got in his commercial work, that I was a fan, a tremendous fan of his. But your point is, you had no idea what I meant. He was a lover of jazz. I'm a lover of jazz. I was starting to photograph jazz. I have a huge collection of jazz musicians, and he was photographing mostly, where I was seeing most of it was for CTI. I don't even know if the record company still exists, but they were very famous for their jazz. Again, going against the grain, they were doing almost a lot of jazz. I won't say all, but a lot of jazz, and using his very colorful images on the covers. And then one day I saw this album cover and went, again, just like the dirigible, I went, the hell is this? This is a terrible photograph. It's nasty. And then I realized the true genius, that this is just beautiful, that it just evoked every underlying, not the overlying, but the underlying elements of the jazz world. Those smoke-filled clubs, the smoking by the nastiness of how society considered jazz to be a non-music, all of those things. And here was this beautiful graphic image of the nasty ashtray, and I went, genius. And it influenced me to find those images. This was just pure genius. And here I was admiring this guy for his wonderful color and very graphic, very perfect photographs. And here he was understanding the use of photography, and set me on a completely different path.
Okay. So Roy de Carava, mispronounced it. Clearly this now, this image is not as iconic as a couple of the ones.
That is right. That is right. I chose this for that very reason, because the reason I chose was that he was doing fine art, but he was doing these really wonderful imagery, and he was going into the communities and doing lots of really wonderful work, a lot of street photography, a lot of jazz photographs. I glommed onto him because He chased the jazz musicians, very moody stuff. And then he was denigrated by a lot of even good photographers for the fact that he printed so dark.
Very dark, yeah.
And so the fact that he was printing so dark was so pure and so beautiful. And I started to see the real beauty in what he was doing with printing so dark and using exactly those parts of the photograph that he wanted you to see were the only thing that you did see, and how he used black, and how he used the negative space of black, and virtually nothing in his pictures was ever white. I chose this one because it is just pure form in terms of what he's saying.
Ernst Haas, also, I don't know, is he like a photographer's photographer? I mean, he just, it seems like photographers especially love this man's work.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, he was, that's for a lot of reasons. He, along with Jay Maisel, Pete Turner, and Ernst Haas, had a gallery in New York City, and they turned color photography into commercial art form. Not only that, the three of them made 35mm color photography and art form. They made it because before these guys, everybody had to use large format or medium format cameras to do anything. And these three made 35mm photography viable in terms of both commercial and art, the art world. I learned so much about how to see in color. Again, at that time, it was absolutely verboten for a real photographer to shoot color. And so I was trying to I just realized that color was my thing, and I was going to try to figure out how to make color an art form. I started that 40 years ago, maybe longer. And Ernst was one of the people, and this was a photograph. This is Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I saw this and just realized how, again, you can turn those raw, ignored, little paid attention to elements. And not only that, but he taught me with this picture that camera lenses, which are very different from painting, camera lenses have their own personality. So he's using a very long lens and is completely giving a completely different look to this street by using that lens. And it's, again, it's junk. It's the worst of the worst of the worst of American consumerism and just the way we have just destroyed our landscapes, and he's turned it into just complete beauty. Most people would just say, "Oh, this is just a terrible street," and many people have tried to duplicate this photograph, but and I'm one of them.
Lou Jones, what a great conversation! Just great photography and such interesting insight, especially with the cigarette image, which I really had no way understanding of where you were going with it. But I love listening to you talk. You teach me so much about the way you see, and with your long history as a photographer. It's I would really like having you on the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And everybody out there, thank you all for watching The Crit House.